I cut my teeth underwriting deals every single day. I cut my teeth on learning all the ins and outs on somebody else doing it, but learning how they did it and why they did it and what went right, what went wrong, and what not to do and what to do when you do deals.
Welcome everyone to today's Hero Capital Raising Show. I'm your host Timai, and today I have an extraordinary guest on the line with us, good friend, fellow Houstonian right here in Houston, Mr. Sam Morris. Sam is the CEO of Sunset Capital. He's been in the business now for over 20 years, have done over $550 million worth of real estate, all different aspects of real estate. He was a former banker for 18 years, was involved in over $1 billion of financing and real estate transactions. He graduated from Northwood University with a BA in banking and finance and a business management degree. He's married for 20 years now, has 4 children. He sits on the board of Texas Traditions Bank and is an active member of various community organizations. And yeah, in this industry, he currently has over 880 units of multifamily, over 1,700 of self-storage, has raised well over 50 million of capital. So let's give Sam a big welcome, y'all. Woohoo!
Thank you very much. Really
Yes,
appreciate it.
I need to install my sound effect for Zoom. So for next one. All right, Sam, yeah, if you can share with us a little bit about you, especially how did you choose to get over here in this syndication business?
Yeah, how did I cross over to the dark side kind of thing? I
Yes.
got it. Yeah, so as you mentioned, Tim, thanks. First of all, thanks so much for having me on. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces out here, and I really appreciate all the support everybody said earlier. That's honoring and it's a blessing. And there's a lot of great people on this call right now too. So I'll lay that as it is. But for me and my background, it's a little bit on the unique side. I didn't know that obviously until I got into things full time. But I grew up on the banking side of the world, right? By training, that was my trade. I became a commercial banker, and so I cut my teeth underwriting deals every single day. I cut my teeth on learning all the ins and outs on somebody else doing it, but learning how they did it and why they did it and what went right, what went wrong, and what not to do and what to do when you do deals. And so I was in that world for quite a long time. And I started investing myself, fortunately, at a pretty young age. So I got into commercial real estate back in 2007 and started investing personally into those deals so that I could take some of that risk on myself and learning even a little bit more from that aspect. And then I started actually raising money for real estate. I started raising money even prior to the Jobs Act passing, which was in 2012. And it was along those lines where I began to get the taste of, oh, hey, if you're able to manage people appropriately, you can see what's going to go well for deals and what to do, what not to do, and the timeframes to do it, and how to finance the deal, make sure you can get the deal managed and put all the pieces together. It made a lot of sense for me. And so I sold my last bank back in 2018. And that's when I made the jump to go full time into real estate, just doing deals from then on out.
Wow. Yeah, that's a fascinating background for sure. I'm sure it has helped you tremendously coming to this industry. So yeah, so share with us like your first deal, what was your first deal, how it went for you.
Yeah, first deal that we purchased, which I would tell you, it was really, I grew a lot because we bought a deal in, I think it was 2008. And 10 months later, a hurricane came through and destroyed it.
Oh my
And when I
goodness.
destroyed it, it went from 100% leased to 12% leased overnight. And it was a trial by fire because I quickly learned the world of insurance. I quickly learned the world of what you need to do when you're working in that realm, and quickly learned the world of contractors and what you have to do, how fast you have to mobilize, what you need to do to take care of tenants, the legal ramifications of not being able to provide housing when you're contractually obligated to provide housing, things of that nature. But what it did too was, ironically enough, you fast forward a little bit after going through the heartache of all of it, and 11 months later, we were able to refinance that property after owning it for only about a month or two and return all the capital back to the investors. So think about that.
Wow.
With less than a year, it literally was less than a year, we were able to return all the capital back to the investors because of an act of God. And it's where you quickly learn about insurance and things of that nature. And so we were very fortunate to be in that position. But what we ended up having afterwards was a product that was far superior to what we originally bought, far greater than the scope of what we probably would have fixed it to when we acquired it. But we were also doing it at a time, just so you understand that back then, that time frame, we acquired that property for less than $10,000 a door.
Wow.
So
The good old
it's just
days.
it was a different time frame, right? And so from that to what I like to tell people, it's funny because you go back to that time frame. I have a lot of battle scars, right? So I've been through some cycles and seen some things both on the ownership side and on the lending side. So you have a great understanding of where we are, where we're going, and if things are worse than what people realize or if they're better than what people realize. And that way, when you're presented with a new market, whether it be COVID or some of the other things that we've all had to grow through, right? And being local here, we've had the Great Freeze back in 19 and Hurricane Harvey in 17. So you had a lot of things. We've had a lot of things occur that are growing potentials for a lot of operators and a lot of investors.
So let's talk about that, especially here in Houston, but this is happening in a lot of places. Insurance rate has gone up quite a bit, and because of all of these natural disasters that happens, are you staying out of areas that, and then there's also risk of there's certain areas where insurance company are pulling out of altogether. Are you staying out of areas that has risk of either high insurance or potential of like insurance not insuring and staying in not better as in like areas that don't have those issues?
Sure, different areas for the cost associated with it. And really, the question that I get asked most of the time along those lines are, hey, what are you doing about those expenses that are outside your control, like insurance, like taxes, things that we face a lot of here in Houston? And what I would tell you is, one, you have to continually develop relationships with the vendors in those industries, right? But two, it doesn't necessarily mean there's not going to be great deals here in Houston, Texas, right? Houston's part of Harris County. If you're in Harris County of Houston, you're a tier one county. Therefore, you're going to be subject to tier one insurance rates, just like the entire state of Florida. There are places like that. Just because the insurance is getting somewhat challenging to deal with, it doesn't mean people aren't going to live there, which doesn't mean there's supply demand for everything, right? And so people are going to want to live in the state of Florida. I'm just using them as an example, or the city of Houston, right? We have millions of people that live here, and it's because of other things other than the high cost of insurance, right? And so what I tell people is you normally have to figure out a way to bake that into your underwriting, right? And so there could be great deals still here in Houston. We're going to close one next month here in Houston, another 240 unit deal that we're acquiring. And obviously there's some, for us, we've been called by brokers even recently as more opportunistic buyers, right? And so I think there's opportunity. Every market you go to, you just have to be able to find what it is and be able to handle what those hurdles or challenges are. Insurance for sure being one of them, but it doesn't mean that we would avoid those areas. Does it mean that we probably looked at a few other areas outside of this immediate area? For sure, we have, because there's a lower barrier to dealing with some of those things. But what it does is it forces us to continue to develop the relationships that we have with our vendors and have a greater understanding of what's coming down, what they're seeing, and have that understanding and then being able to react and adjust to it. And so for us, a lot of what we do is NOI driven. So if you take multifamily, for instance, and if we know that on our renewal, we're going to go up $25 a door just for insurance costs, well, that's a cost that we're going to have to figure out a way to pass that on to the end renter. And so it's a constant thing that we're working on, but it's for the good operators out there, it's something they're trying to stay ahead of. And on the acquisition side too, you just have to, you need to bake that into your underwriting as conservatively as you can.
I see. Yeah, well, for sure. And then are there any areas that you would like, hey, you know what is like too risky that you would stay out of?
Yeah, if you're talking locally here, maybe in Houston, there's definitely some areas that I would say we probably have some PTSD with. And then there's some areas that, from a location standpoint, it's burned a lot of people in the past, right? And so without going into specifics,
Right.
because there are these calls that may have assets there, I would tell you there are some areas that we would look at when we go, if it's a high crime area, things of that nature. And being local in this area, you should know where some of those areas are, right? And I think you can make money anywhere. I really do. It's just how deep you're going to have to get down there, how dirty you're going to have to be able to make that asset work, and then being able to sell that asset to somebody else on the dream or whatever you've created to being able to make it work. And so, yeah, there are areas we would steer clear of. But they're probably fewer and far between as far as us having the understanding of knowing exactly where we are. What I like to say is what we do and what we do. And if anything, COVID taught us, hey, we love, if you're talking Houston specifically, we love a lot of the suburbs of Houston, specifically those that are known for good schools and things of that nature, where there's going to be drivers other than some of the economics of why desirability there is to live there. For a lot of families and people. And so that's where we would try to focus if we were doing it into those specific areas.
Very cool. What asset class do you focus in on? Let's talk about both, the asset type and asset class.
Yeah, so we're in two verticals. We're in multifamily and storage. And I would tell you, for us, from an asset class, we'll do A to C on both of those, really. And so we have a pretty broad range, and it's really more of where the buy box is. And so for us, it's pretty specific of how we buy. So if we look at storage, we may go, hey, look, our buy box is we want 50,000 square feet and up. We want it to be in an area. It could be a secondary tertiary market, but we want it to be somewhere where we have population growth that's increasing. You want to see median income being 3% of the median income being no greater than what the average market rent would be for that storage asset. And so we have very specific parameters in which we go through, and it's similar along the lines of multifamily. We like to see in-migration to the areas. We want to be able to see growth, whether you're looking at it through a Yardi or CoStar or other softwares that are available out there. But then we want to be able to see what we can do to the asset to actually create that NOI value. And so we have pretty specific parameters in the buy box that we're looking at. And that's probably more of a driver, even more so than, location has to be there, things like that. But it's our buy box that we're specific on.
And like with this current market, the way it is, has your buy box changed any from, say, a few years ago, or is it still the same?
Yeah, probably slightly, just because we maybe even skewed even a little bit more conservative. Just because a couple of years ago, to actually win some deals, you really did have to stretch a little. And I would tell you that the supply demand from a buyer, the bid-ask spread, things like that, they were all a little bit more out of balance than where they are today. And although we may have some bid-ask spreads that are out of balance a little, but you're starting to see when things do trade, they trade closer to what market would be. And so for us, we're being a little bit more conservative, I would say, on things like, if you're talking locally, like insurance and taxes, and making sure we can get what we think we're going to be able to do, and actually can that spread out, which is hard because you got to be somewhat of a crystal ball it a little bit and go, hey, we think that the increases will only be this, and here's why. But I would tell you, we've gotten a little bit, as we've grown a little bit, we probably have gotten a little bit newer with our asset classes. We stay out of some of the things. I would say we typically won't do anything now in multifamily world that's pre-1980. And part of that is just it's trial and error. We don't want to deal with any copper wiring or aluminum wiring, excuse me, or the galvanized piping, things that are going to be making it a little bit more operationally challenging to deal with on an ongoing basis. And that's probably some that type of shift.
Yeah, that seems to be a very common shift of 1980s and newer. Like most people I've interviewed, especially in the multifamily, like that seems to be the sweet spot for everyone. Yeah, it's very interesting. Now you've been through many different markets, and you've seen the different market cycles. With what's out there, what's happening now with rate cap expiring and like all the expenses have gone up. What are you seeing out there in terms of challenges in the marketplace and opportunities?
Yeah, no, great question. So for us, what we've seen is the deals that we've actually seen, well, the deals that we've consummated too, because we closed one in February, we'll close one next month. We may actually close two next month. There's an element of distress in the deals that we're seeing that are actually trading, whether that be with the asset or with the partnerships, that the entities that own them themselves, right? And there's some element of that's been in the market, at least for right now, of those are the deals that have actually traded. But I will also say, like the deals that we've actually consummated, we've been in them for a while, maybe a little bit longer than normal. So it's taking a little bit longer for deals to actually trade in a lot of cases. In the deal we closed in February, I mean, we were talking to them summer before, right? So, I mean, it took just several months and it was more just hanging around the hoop. The deal actually falls into the lap. And so the deal that will close in May, really we were talking to them back in October of like we had an agreed upon, yeah, here we go. And so it's just taking a lot longer for some of these things. They have a little bit more hair on them. The later deal will probably close next month. We really just got under the contract. We went hard last week. It was a contractor issue because it's a C of O deal. So contractor needs the money now. And so you're starting to see certain things and elements like that occur that will make it where you're seeing deals actually get consummated. There's some element of distress to them because there's not many people right now who are sitting there going, hey, yeah, 2024, we've hit the life cycle of what we want to own, and now we're sellers. We're market sellers today, but time frame or some metric. And so you're not seeing a lot of that in the market.
I see. Okay. It's very fascinating. So let's talk about capital raising. What was your first raise that you had to be a part of that raise? What was that like for you? How much was that raise?
Sure. For real estate,
Yeah.
because that's where I started raising money, believe it or not. I
Oh,
started raising
okay.
on the bank side. So this was
Okay.
obviously, and so we would raise money for our bank. And it was really what taught me how to do it for real estate.
Okay.
My first raise in real estate was in 2012. And this is prior to the Jobs Act passing too. So there was no crowdfunding or crowdsourcing, things like that. It was literally, I have a slew of people and I'm calling, and we raised $1,650,000 just by me calling people, and that was enough to acquire the deal. We paid $50,000 a door for this beautiful property too, which we've since obviously cycled out and sold. And I was the co in that. I was not the operator. And so I asset managed and co-GP'd it. So even back then we were SEC compliant, right? Probably without even knowing either. But I truly asset managed the deal and then helped raise the money for the deal. There weren't like all these systems and things that we have in place today to be able to do all this stuff. There weren't, I'm sure there was probably email campaigns and things like that back then in those days, but that's not how this worked. It was all me calling individuals who I knew wanted to invest in this. And I was still working at the bank too. So it was something that I was able to do on the side and go, hey, this is another asset. I want to be able to do this and show all the people how we can make money this way. And yeah, it was 2012. And I want to say it was $1,650,000 or $1,750,000 that I raised. And actually, you're probably just not knowing any different. Probably raised it pretty quick. It was probably in a couple of days, just because I had
That's
the
good.
relationships with the people. So
That's awesome. Yeah. So share, what about now? How is capital raising different for you now, if any?
yeah, obviously with the invention of the Jobs Act and the crowdfunding and crowd things that you can do, it's a little bit more broader than that. But I would still tell you that we still practice going deep versus wide. And so
Mm,
we have, I would say, a handful of investors that we really hit in every single deal. They're in every single deal. And we further develop those relationships. And even though we do things on a large scale, like we'll have a happy hour this month for all of our investors and things like that, the stuff that really pays off for us is the more intimate setting things where it's more one-on-one with the investor or investors, maybe just a small group of us. That seems to be what's provided us the best relationships for a long period of time, because we've had a lot of those same investors from 2012. They still invest with me in most every deal today. And you look at that's really it's more the development of going deep with a handful of people versus going wide with the thousands.
I love that. So share with us some of the strategies about going deep. So you mentioned doing happy hours. I assume you also do like investor dinners type stuff, or give us some of your strategies.
So we do some other different things. We do a cast and blast in September where it's just a handful of guys, and so that's just a fishing and hunting deal. And then we've done some other pretty wild things too. We've got one right now, and I've never done this too, but we'll be going to Florida. We'll take a small group of guys to Florida, and these are better investors, and we're going to go iguana hunting, which I didn't
Oh,
even know that was but an invasive species hunt out there.
okay.
But we do other little things too. Every month we push out a newsletter to our entire base. Probably one of the different things for that is the content for that newsletter is actually from our investor base. So each and every week, if not every month, we get a bunch of questions. And then the questions are really what produce the content. So last month, we got a bunch of the questions, say like on interest rates, because the Fed met and nothing changed.
Mm.
We do get some insight. I personally get some insight just getting to meet with federal regulators and things from being on the board of a bank and getting maybe a little bit of understanding of what their thought process is. And what we'll do is in our newsletter, we will provide them the information as to where we are. We normally don't state too many opinions. We just normally give them the facts of things, and we cite sources so that they can further go into it if they want. But we want to answer whatever that question is. And obviously we had a lot of people asking questions about interest rates specifically. What is it that we think that is actually going to happen? Because the media tells us this, but then we get this kind of conflicting information, but we also thought it was going to be this from the beginning of the year. And so we just would we'll put up the Fed minutes so they can actually read what is actually being said in those meetings. We'll cite the Bureau of Labor Statistics data or something of that nature where we can show where the actual, documentation of all of it is. And because of that, it appeals to a lot of our investors because they get the information summarized for them that way.
All right, that's really good. And in terms of marketing for new investors, what are some of the activities that you do there?
Yeah, it's as laughable as is it going to sound. We really don't go out and do much of marketing for investors. We really don't. We've been blessed with the ones that we have, and the word of mouth has been by far our best referral source. We'll do things, like I said, like the happy hour. We'll let people to invite more, but a lot of it too is me speaking on programs like this and people coming in and being able to watch and see, and then that draws those people in. But I'm fortunate enough, I get to speak a lot of different places over the country, and that's been helpful because it drives the right kind of investor to us and those that we think we can work well with one another. So as far as like other marketing aspects, we're not into the gimmicks or things like that. We're not a tech savvy company that way. And I'm not afraid to admit that, I guess. I will tell you, we are starting to probably more adopt some of those aspects and those tricks or whatever people use to go do it. But it still comes down to can you and I get along well with one another, and can we have a good understanding that I can provide something that's of value to you, right? And can I show you it's of value to you based upon what your recommendation, what your requirements are, right?
Gotcha. With you being active on the banking side of it, if you look into your investor database right now, what's a profile of a typical or of most of your investors look like? Who are they?
Yeah, I mean, we know who our avatar is, and it's very specific. We're not that unsophisticated, I guess, yet, but we are sophisticated enough to know who our avatar is because it's a majority of our investors, and we've learned what it is, and ironically enough, it's an engineer. And part of that is because of the way that we communicate, the way we put out information, it's more technical in nature. And so we were trying to figure out why, other than the fact that we were in Houston, Texas, and there's just a lot of engineers out here, why what we did appealed so much to them. And it was because of a lot of that technical aspect, the way we present things, whether it be modeling or numbers based. And ironically enough, that's who that appeals to. So it became one of those quick things where we're like, oh, duh, what we're doing, it appeals to our number one investor in our avatar. That's why we have that many people that way. And it's a large portion of the base are those engineers. And it's really, I say engineer broadly, right? We haven't gone enough into it to say it's mechanical or chemical or petroleum or whatever. It's engineer by trade. And that's just who we appeal to. So
that's fascinating because earlier when you said talking about sending them the Fed's minutes, I'm like, who reads that stuff?
Not many people do, but those types of groups do. And it doesn't mean that they have to, but they like knowing that it's there and they can hyperlink to whatever it is and go, all right, I know you're not just making these numbers up, right? But you've done the research to actually show me that these are accurate and correct data. So
Yeah, that's really, yeah, definitely very interesting for sure. Like who we are and how we market does attract, yeah, a certain audience type for sure.
Very much, very much.
Yeah. In terms of your investor, are they all over the US then, or do you happen to have a lot of them here in Houston since you are here locally?
Yeah, I would say the bulk of our investors are in the state of Texas, but we do have investors all over the country.
Okay.
Probably the easiest way to say that.
Right. Okay, gotcha. And then you started out in multifamily. When did you transition over to the self-storage space?
Yeah, so I acquired into self-storage maybe 4 years ago, right at the start of COVID, actually. So I remember it was right before COVID hit. We had acquired our first deal that way, which was a fun and challenging time to do something like that. And we quickly realized that we probably needed a better vertical with that because we needed more control over the management side. And so last year we acquired our property management company and brought it, so it's all in-house now. And as I call right before this, I was talking to our president, our VP of Ops on our management side for the newest deal we're doing. And so it just enabled us to continue to work that scale a lot faster and really have a better understanding of the operational and business side of the process. So
I see. Okay. We're gonna circle back to that real quick, but I'm curious as to when you transition from multifamily to self-storage, did your investors resisted that at all, or or was it just as easy,
it
since the
was
investors
actually a lot
already.
of investors were requesting it. Exactly. They were really wanting us to get into that vertical. And it was something that it had already been talked about for years prior. Hey, this is a vertical we're interested in. What do you guys think? And so
I see.
we had already laid a lot of the groundwork to being able to get into that industry. And it really was more of a how do we acquire the knowledge to be able to sell on something like that, and really the operational knowledge that we feel we need to have so that we don't have those gaps within a life cycle of a deal.
Oh, that's good. So share with us what your business model looks like now. Like what are all the different components, different
Yeah, it's a
companies?
little complex. So Sunset Capital is still the main company, right? And so that's our capital company. Last year we acquired another group called Land Park Advisors, and there's three companies in that group. One of them is a company called Right Move Storage, and they do our vertical for our storage side. There's Land Park Commercial, which manages and leases 5.4 million square feet or so here in Houston, and that's
Oh,
going to be
wow.
office, industrial, retail. So we have some exposure to that, but not on the ownership side. And then Land Park Brokerage Services, which is we have a broker services group. And so we have obviously brokers that work for us, and we give them that buy box, that specific buy box we talked about, and deals to be able to see them clearly before they push out to the market. People that are just calling nonstop, trying to drum up deals that way too.
I
And
see.
so really from that vertical side, and then personally, obviously I sit on the board of the bank. And so we keep really in touch and in tune to what's going on in the financial markets and financial world, and obviously have a lender of choice too.
Very cool. So what's your growth strategy that had you go out and acquire Land Park
That
Advisors?
vertical,
Yeah.
yeah. So part of it was to get fully vertical on our storage side, right, from the management standpoint. But the brokerage aspect of it was really interesting because I now was able to acquire effectively an acquisition team, right? Somebody that would help us continue to grow and with it underwrite and things like that, and really blow up that side, mainly on the storage side, mainly blow up that storage side for us to be able to acquire, including having people that can go bird dog deals for us, meaning they're cold calling owners for us. We didn't have the scale at Sunset Capital to be able to do that. We have it now. So
Very cool. So what is now your next move? What does that look like in terms of your growth you're scaling?
yeah, so we've already closed an apartment deal this year. We'll close another apartment deal. We've got a storage deal that will close next month as well. And so I would tell you, for us, we always said we were going to stay somewhat boutique, at least on the capital side. And so if we do 4, 6 deals a year, we're very happy with that. And so it was one of those things that for us, it just enabled us to have more horses to pull the sled, right? And so for us, it's going to be as we begin to life cycle through a lot of these things, we're going to get hopefully larger from the standpoint of the size of the deals, larger
Right.
deals themselves, where we're putting in more of our own personal capital into the deals. And so really less reliance on our passive investors, but depending on the size of the deal, obviously need for that as well. And so
Right.
it's contrarian because we're not here to blow up the world and just, I want to go do every deal I can do. We're going to probably be a little bit more picky and choosy of just doing the right deal.
Ah, gotcha. So with you, which is interesting way, normally when people grow, they're looking, even if they're putting in their own money, they're also looking to grow even more of investors' money and even looking into family offices and institutional type players. Are you looking in that direction as well? Or what is
Everything
it?
for us is investor centric. So it actually starts with the investor. And so the decisions that we make, everything that we do, it literally is what is it that's going to get the greatest return for that investor, for the passive investor, which we are, right? And so in every deal I do, I'm a passive, I'm an LP in every deal I do. And it makes it easy because I can say, look, I'm aligned with you, investor, because I'm putting my money alongside you in every one of the deals we do. I may get compensated differently too for running the deal or managing the deal, but
Hmm.
I'm alongside this ride with you. And the decisions that we make are going to have this group, they're going to have their best interest in mind. Whatever it is, it's going to be this. And so people will ask when we're doing a deal, hey, you presented this as a 5-year deal. What happens if X? And it was, you better have an answer for whatever that it may be. Or it's, will you sell early? And absolutely we will. If I can hit your number and your metric early, why wouldn't I? Because it's about returning the most amount of money in the shortest period of time to this investor, right? So that we can go and do another one. But everybody's incentivized that way. And so I think we've structured it to where we're appropriately incentivized to do the best and do right by the investor. And that's not going to change. What would change, I think, is that would there be a slowdown from the perspective of we're only going to do these types of deals or something that we know we're only going to make X type of money on? That could be a reality in the years to come. I'm still a young guy. My team's still young. We're planning on doing this for a long time. I don't plan on going anywhere. I have too much fun doing this type of stuff too. I don't ever see where I don't work. I'll put it that way.
So what are you, is there any, for the lack of better term, like help or challenges that you foresee that you will need more support around?
For sure. Yeah, I think any good CEO does, right? Because you're not looking necessarily at today. You're looking at 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. For us, marketing is a challenge. It's something that we're going to probably have to continue to work on. And I think our answer to that, at least in the interim, is more using third-party vendors to help us before we grow the team more that way. I would say accounting has been a constant challenge for us, making sure you have enough bodies to do all the work necessarily associated with it. But when you talk about things specifically for capital raisers and things like that, I don't think that you could be known well enough, right?
Mm.
And it really depends on how comfortable you are in promotion and promoting yourself, right? Um, and really, that's not a high comfort level for me. I don't like to, go over here and say, hey, look at all these wonderful things I've done. But I also don't want to discredit all these wonderful things I've done. And I don't want the team to think that, hey, you guys have done wonderful, great things over here. And so I feel I have to tell at least people about that. But you got to do it in a manner where you're not coming off everything in this world has to offer too. Because I will say that about this industry is that it is constantly changing. There's constantly new technologies. There's constant new stuff that is evolving with it. And my gosh, if you're not a lifelong learner that way, you will get left behind. And for us, I would tell you, we have to just continually keep pushing that rock up the hill. It's probably the easiest way to say that.
So what are some of your favorite tools that you use in the business?
As far as what, you're gonna have to be real
Just
specific because yeah, I have great teams around me that help with a lot of the things that we do. As far as
right.
KPI look at, or
It could be around capital raising or it could just be around running the business in general. Yeah.
yeah, as far as old school as it sounds, man, there is not much that goes better than a personal phone call or personal text to our investor, right? To that one person. There's just not much that goes above that. And it's something genuine, not where I'm necessarily selling them, more of a checking in. to where every communication they don't hear from you is something that you're selling them. And so it's part of the reason we do some of the things that we do. That a happy hour is just that. It's just, hey guys, come get together. There's no sales pitch or anything associated with it. And some people will tell you that's a missed opportunity, but I would also say the missed opportunity is if you're focused so much on your sales aspect that you're forgetting to develop the relationship associated with it. And so that's why I
Right.
say we go deep, wide. But as far as tools that we use, everybody's platform, I think, is A1 critical for them because you're probably not going to be able to operate without it. I can't say that any platform is just amazing over the others, but I would tell you the AI tools that are out there that have the auto emails and things of that nature, that's great and all. But like I said, nothing quite beats just picking up the phone and going, hey, bud, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona today, and I know you're out here. If you got time, you want to meet for lunch, or I'm going to be over here. You guys want to meet up, or whatever it may be? And having the human contact, I just think that's highly underrated right now in this tech savvy world we have.
Yeah, it sounds like personal, high touch. It's a really big one for you.
Very much. We're going to do a launch probably next week where we'll launch a new deal, and it'll fill up more than likely fairly quickly as our others have. But it would not be hard if you notice I go down the list and I don't see certain names. If I call them, the one, they'll probably know why I'm calling, but two, I'll check in. Don't want you to miss out on this opportunity if it's something you want to do. And I would say our hit ratio on that is probably in the 90% plus range. And when you have that kind of hit ratio, that wasn't something that was developed today or the last year. That was something that took a long time to develop. And you're leveraging a lot of that. So if you do this long enough, consistent enough, pretty much who's coming into your deals, how much they have to put into it, or what they're interested in, so that you're marketing to the right person. Because it may be that this deal is not going to be a good fit for their portfolio, right? And I know that ahead of time, so that when they get in, I know I don't necessarily have to bother them. Doesn't mean I don't call them, but I don't have to bother them on that deal.
It's really good. So I'm curious as to if you were to do it all over again, and you can take this from two different ways. It's up to you. Either A, if you can do it all over again, how would you start this business differently? Or B, someone starting out new in this business, how would you recommend for them to go about it?
And I would have bet the farm early, because when you don't know that you're buying properties at 15,000 or 20,000 a door, and how amazing that was when we were doing it, of just how it turns out to be, right? You hear people say, when's the best time to get into real estate? All right, when's the second best time to get into real estate? Right. And so getting into the game was a big deal for me. And I had because of my conservative background being a banker, I had a lot of analysis paralysis on a lot of things. And so it took a lot for me to go, okay, I'm going to go ahead and fire this bullet. But once I did, obviously it was a snowball effect of just keep doing deals and doing more and more. I haven't counted my K1s yet, but I was joking with our CPA, and he just said it just feels like you just have a ton of these every single year that you're bringing in. And we've had them a long time, and it's been something that's gotten me to a point where, yeah, you do have some financial freedom associated with that. But if I were to change anything, I probably would have gone faster and probably taken more risk, to be honest. It was one of those things where I had a lot of things holding me back, but it was fear. It was the false evidence appearing real. And so it slowed me down from, had I not had that, I probably would have pedaled to the metal, and I don't know how big we would be right now, but it'd probably be
Right.
bigger. So,
Yeah, that's really, yeah, it's the great answer for sure. I think that a lot of people feels that way, especially with the way real estate has gone up in the last 10 years. It's
sure.
been crazy. My team and I was underwriting a deal where the operator was estimating the exit cap like around almost $250,000 a door. I'm like, wow. It was a nicer property, but wow, that's gonna be here really soon where your class B is gonna be over $200,000 a door, and it's
Maybe one day it will be, right? I don't know when that'll be, but it very well could be.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Sam, for the folks listening that want to reach out to you, potentially learn from you, invest with you, where would you like to send them?
Yeah, our website's the easiest way to do that. So Sunset Capital. So if you just Google Sunset Capital, SEO should be number one always on that kind of stuff. But we're at sunset-capital.com, and you can learn about us. And thanks, Isabel. You can just jump right in there, and it's a pretty easy click through. You can see what we're about, and obviously email us. And we're pretty responsive via email.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. You've been a wealth man of wisdom and knowledge, and I really appreciate you.